What is up? Welcome back. 2024-25 NBA season previews. The NBA season is finally here. Well, at least it will be in a couple of days at the time of this recording. My name is Matt Hanifan. This is Jerry Walker. Jerry, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Matt. Very excited for the NBA season to be here. Seems like we've been waiting far too long for real basketball. Obviously, we had preseason. That doesn't excite me as much. I'm very excited now. A lot of entertaining teams, a lot of entertaining storylines. It's gonna be a good year. I just have a good feeling about it.
Me too. Today we're going to be talking about the New Orleans Pelicans, 49-33 last year. They were a play-in team. Unfortunately, Zion got hurt in the play-in game after dropping 40 against the Los Angeles Lakers. They lost in the first round to the Oklahoma City Thunder. In 4 games, they got swept. But I guess just initially off the top, what were your thoughts on the Hawks just this last year, and what do you think? What do you make of their offseason heading into this upcoming year?
I mean, you see what happens when they have a healthy Zion Williamson. 49 wins. More often than not, 49 wins will get you a spot in the playoffs. It's just this Western Conference is so good. And they were only a game back of the Mavericks for winning that division title, so they really had a strong year. I was impressed with what they did. And obviously, the story of this offseason for them, apart from losing Jonas Valanciunas, is the addition is they went out and traded for DeJounte Murray, which I'm very excited. I think we talked about the Hawks a little bit earlier this week and how he lost or how he left there, and we compared it to him in San Antonio to him in New Orleans a bit. And I'm hoping we see that similar production of him going back to a bit more defensively. I know he can score. He'll be that ball handler. I think he does pair very well with that rest of that starting five: C.J. McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. Obviously, my big concern is that centerpiece because you did have Valanciunas around for a while, and he just seemed to be the staple there. Now it's looking like Herbert Jones is going to get the start. He did start 76 games last season, only averaged a little over 3.5 rebounds along with 11 points. So he'll have to have a big step up. And then obviously the draft, they got and get Yves Missy from Baylor. I think that's a solid pickup because that seems like something they need. Seems like your guard play is pretty strong. You got Jose Alvarado off the bench, Trey Murphy the third off the bench. Went out and got Antonio Reeves, Jordan Hawkins. I think could make a little bit of a step forward this year, but it's really that whole DeJounte Murray thing that if he gets working the way he can, because it was a weird time in Atlanta for him. If he gets clicking and Zion stays healthy, this team could very well win that division, considering how iffy it is at times. But then also Memphis will be back, Dallas will be back. So
I think the piece that I'm most interested in is Brandon Ingram. And I think the thing with Brandon Ingram was that, he was a little bit underwhelming. I don't know if you remember the FIBA World Cup a couple of years ago. He was very underwhelming. He was expected to be one of the number one guys. And I know Team USA doesn't send their A list of guys over, to the FIBA World Cup because obviously I think the Olympics is more important. And I think that's what they think as well. And so again, Brandon Ingram was at least expected to take that, that step up. He played 45 games 2 years ago. I think there was plenty of lower body injuries that hit him. But then last year you saw okay, he played 64 games again, still wasn't the greatest fit, but then he wants a max extension. New Orleans is pretty reluctant to give him that. They didn't extend him over the offseason. None of the other teams if he was going to get traded, he was likely going to have to sign the max from teams that would likely sign him to the max, or else he would leave in free agency. So it wouldn't make sense to trade for him. That didn't happen. And so for him, it's kind of a prove it year. He's entering his age 27 season. He's entering his 9th year in the league. He hasn't been the healthiest guy in the world. Again, he did play 64 games last year, which was the most since his rookie season in Los Angeles in 2016-17 when he played 79. But he's got to prove it, especially in this kind of context where he's also not going to have the ball as much as he used to. He's with Zion. He's with McCollum. He's with Murray. All those guys need the ball to be effective. And that's just kind of where I'm interested to see where this goes, especially with a guy like Brandon Ingram. How does he become more malleable? How does he, Does he I think he probably needs to change his shot diet a little bit. He lives in the mid range, and he's effective there, but at the same time, that's not today's NBA. That's not the best way to go about things. And so when you're sharing the floor with Zion Williamson, when you're sharing the floor with Herb Jones, who's significantly improved his 3-point shot, but still isn't respected by certain teams when he's in the corner. When you're surrounded by DeJounte Murray, who wasn't the most efficient shooter when he was in Atlanta. He hasn't been the most efficient 3-point shooter, even on relative volume, for most of his career. Like, how do they kind of mold those pieces together to where they do become more malleable? I mean, they did finish 49-33 to your point last year. Like, when they have Zion on the floor, they played a near 50-win pace, and that's just kind of. But that's also been a question in and of itself. Like, will he be healthy? But like, when they are healthy, how do they kind of gel this together? Especially now with another guy who needs the ball in their hands, or who is a primary, secondary ball handler in DeJounte Murray. I'm just interested to see not just how that works for Murray or how that works for Ingram, but how that works for everyone. And I think Murray, just because there is the cloud hanging over about him, wanting to be extended. How does that work?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there is so many different variants to this team. Because there's a lot of guys, like to your point right there, a lot of guys like having the ball, a lot of guys like shooting the ball on this team. Could go very well, or it could very well come crashing down and burn the way that they play together. It's a lot of guys who, to Brandon Ingram's point, he had the ball a lot last year. He averaged a little over 20 points a game, and I could see him having a little bit of a step back. He wasn't exactly the most impressive on the defensive end, averaged just over half a block, just under a steal a game. So I think that's where he's going to have to make his money and show that he's a max player, because sure, DeJounte Murray plays solid defense. CJ McCollum, so at times, but it's going to be a very much a team defense. And my big concern is, and we've seen smaller centers before, but it does look like Herbert Jones is listed on the depth chart, at least as that starting center. He played the majority of the season as a small forward shooting guard last year. He's only 6'7". In the Western Conference, where we have some of the best centers and some of the biggest, scariest players in the league, how is he going to be able to stack up there? And will he still be starting come the end of the season? Because he's not exactly a big guy. And maybe that plays to their advantage of they're just going to try and run people and use him to spread the floor a bit, because he did, like you said, shot just over 41% from three last year. Concerns me because then you don't have a true big man down low. Zion's obviously physical enough, but that's why the Valanciunas piece and him leaving concerns me so much for this Pelicans team. Because you got, even in that division, you have the Rockets, you have Victor Wembanyama on the Spurs. Memphis we think they'll be a better team because they'll be healthy this year.
They have
Dallas, yeah, they have Edey as well. So, I mean, Edey's 7'4", and he's going to be going up against a 6'7" guy. Herb Jones is going to have I think he's my X factor. As far as I know, there's a lot of other players around, but the way he has to mold his game now and change it a little bit now that he's playing that 5 and not the 2 or the 3, it's a little concerning in my thinking.
I find it, yeah. I one of my bigger questions was like, why didn't they just bring Valanciunas back?
Yeah.
If I can remember correctly, I believe they had his bird rights. I know. I mean, he got 3 for 30 in Washington. He's probably not going to be in Washington past the deadline.
No.
And the Pelicans could very well be a team come the deadline that's wanting to trade for a center. And so my question is just like, why didn't you bring him back? I mean, I know it's not the cleanest fit just from a spacing perspective, but like, he did his job there and he did it effectively. And to your point, like, just looking at it, the Williamson-Jones front courts, those small ball front courts and spurts, like, they've played well.
Yeah.
But when you're doing that for an extended period of time against, all these bigger bodies throughout the entire league, not even just their own division or their own conference, like, it's a big question to ask.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you look at the Thunder, Nuggets, Timberwolves, all these teams, the Suns even, all these teams that they're going to be competing kind of with. Lakers still have some bodies. If it works, I think they could finish right around the same record again. But I could see a world where their backcourt or their front court is just getting dominated night in, night out. And then you could see them drop. I could see them winning only about 40 games if that happens, and maybe even a little less. So it's a big concern. But otherwise, the rest of the team, I do like the rest of the team. I do like the build of it. It's just that center power forward area is kind of concerning. And I'm curious to see how Misi does. Drafted in 24th overall this year, or 21st overall. He's a 7-footer from Baylor. Maybe we see him get more minutes throughout the year and kind of move into that starting role if things with Herbert Jones don't go well.
Yeah, he was someone that I was a big fan of in the pre-draft. Like, he was a guy who entered, I think he started playing basketball at like 16 or 17 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind, he's still really young. And so, like, he's only been playing basketball for a few years. When he first started at Baylor, like, he was very, very raw. Like, the athletic traits were obviously there, but he was very, very raw. And you could see, like, they really did a good job developing him over just his 1 year there. Like, Scott Drew did it. Like, it was a phenomenal. Like, he became a better ball handler in space. They were working on his shooting a little bit. Like, he developed more touch. I mean, the thing with him, the thing that he's very good at is like he's a very athletic player. Like, he's a vertical spacer. He can, he's a very big lob threat, solid screener. And then defensively, like, he's very good in switches. He can contain his own on the perimeter. He's a good shot blocker. Like, I think something that they did last year was improve his timing around the rim in terms of his shot blocking, in terms of, like, they also improved his foot speed and all those different, like, kind of intangible traits. And so, like, for him specifically landing in that spot, I think Willie Green has done like a solid job developing guys. Like, we've seen what they've done with like Trey Murphy, for example. Okay. Trey Murphy, by the way, just got extended like a few hours ago. He's going to be there for 4 more years for $112 million. But like, he's a guy that they've done a good job of, like a 3-and-D wing, just adding incremental parts to his skill set over time. But he's grown since he's been there. So I think they've done a solid job developing, and like, this is a good spot for him in the sense that, like, maybe by the end of his rookie season, I'm not going to say it maybe that quickly, but like, he becomes like a functional rotation player. Maybe he is by the end of his rookie season, or maybe he becomes a starter at some point. I know they did also add Daniel Tice, who is just an undersized big. I don't know. They added him. I don't know why exactly they're not starting him, unless if it's just like a mentorship thing. Like, he still, I think, has some juice left, and I still think he's going to at least be in that rotation to start the season. But I would probably start him. Excuse me. I probably would start him, but it's not my choice, and I know they have, again, a lot of bodies there. The Herb Jones piece, again, like, I just don't know the wear and tear. I know Willie Green's talking a bit like positionless aspect, but at the same time, like, no one on that floor is bigger than 6'7". Herb Jones is 6'5". Like, that's a little bit of a problem if that's something that you're relying on for, a prolonged period of time. Maybe they don't. Maybe they try to stagger those minutes with Tice and Misi after an initial few minutes with that starting group in the first and third quarters. Like, I'm still trying to figure out, like, what the motive is there outside of just being positionless.
And I will say with the Misi side of things, like, we've seen him develop so quickly. As you said, he only started playing basketball maybe 5 years ago, worked his way up very quickly, got drafted this year, one of the better defensive players in the league. I mean, he's all defensive team and all Big 12 for all freshman team. So he had a great 1 year at Baylor, and I am excited to see how he kind of transitions to the NBA. I know, coming off the bench first, get your first games under your belt, see how he compares and competes with these other guys who have been in the league for a while. So there's that. A positionless basketball, it works at times, but you have to have the right players, and they have to be a little unselfish. And that's another concern I have with the Pelicans is these guys like having the ball in their hands. They like being the ones to take the shot. Game on the line, who are you going to – it's like, for me, I always think whenever there's a bunch of players, game on the line, who are you going to give the ball to? And I don't know if there's a right answer for this team at the moment.
I would say just lean Zion because of how physically imposing he is. Yeah. But outside of, like, he's not a guy who's going to shoot. Like, he's not going to shoot 3-point shots consistently. Like, he's going to try to get to do whatever he can to get to the rim, and he's incredibly dominant when he's on the floor and healthy. When he can do that and get downhill and, put pressure on a defense. But maybe like if you're just looking at pure shot making, like McCollum, maybe DeJounte's fine. I mean, it's good to have multiple options, but at the same time, it's going to be hopefully it doesn't hurt anyone's ego, I guess, is the best.
There's a world where you have too many options, and I think this could be it. And the question, as always, the biggest question surrounding the Pelicans, you hinted to it a bit earlier, is will Zion stay healthy? He's kind of been back and forth, unhealthy. Then he had one season where he played 61 games, and he was out for the whole year, only played 29 the following season, then played 70 last year. The current trend doesn't look like it's going to be a great year for Zion, but fingers crossed it is, because he is so much fun to watch when he is playing. And that's my concern, is if something does happen, I don't know who's going to step up on this team in terms of the pure dominance, because in his 70 games, he averaged just under 6 rebounds a game, 33% from three. I know you don't need him shooting that much, but he's had 22.9 points per game. That's a lot to go missing again. And if it does, I don't think it will necessarily, but if it does, this team could very well win like 34, 35 games.
I don't know if it's going to be that low, but
no, that might be a little drastic because they did win 49 last year, but I think they could fall just under that 40 mark if Zion's out and the Herb Jones experience doesn't work.
Yeah. I think I in my head I have them around like 45 wins.
Yeah, I do too. Just because I think they're better than a lot of those other. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think they're better than a lot of those bottom teams that we saw last year. Spurs might take a little bit of a step forward, but I don't think it's going to be drastic enough. We know Memphis will be better this year. But last year they competed with the Lakers, the Kings, the Warriors, the Suns. I don't see them doing that again this year. But who knows? This is the NBA. Yeah, and anything can happen in the NBA. Who knows? For all we know, they could come out and win 52 games and everything clicks perfectly. But I don't think it. I like them at kind of that, like you said, 45, maybe 46 wins, finishing right on that fringe of a 9, 10, 11 seed. So, and I don't think if they do make the playoffs, they could very well be bounced in the first round as well.
Me too. I agree.
Right.
Do you have any
No, this will be a very telling year for New Orleans and kind of the future of them. I could see them making a trade towards the deadline if stuff doesn't work, either bringing in a guy, like you were saying, bringing in a center, or just clearing up some space on that front court of maybe shipping out one of those guys who, say Brandon Ingram, doesn't thrive with this team. I could see him getting shipped somewhere else because he still has talent there. So we'll see what happens. But Pelicans, it's going to be an interesting and intriguing season, to say the least.
Me too. And like, again, with all these pieces together, like they've been a team that has been a disappointing exit. And I think Willie Green is coaching for his job, potentially.
Yep.
And so that's where it's just like, I don't know if they completely bottom out. But maybe they get off to a poor start. He gets axed or something like that happens. It's hard to predict them because, again, there's too many question marks with, how malleable these guys are, the front court rotation, this, that, and the other. I think they're a fine team, but I still think they're a couple, one or two tiers at least below the top teams in the West. When it's all said.
I do have one more final thought. Just looking at the way they start the regular season, it's not a terrible start for them. So it could be time for them to gel together and start on Wednesday night, home to the Bulls. Then they play 2 in Portland, 2 in Golden State, home to the Pacers, home to the Hawks, and then home to Portland again. That's
not a bad. Like they should be able to go.
Yeah.
How many games is that? 5, like 8 games?
Yeah, 8 games.
I was like, they can go 5-3, 6-2.
Absolutely, and it's maybe that's the thing they need. They need to start like that to get everyone kind of on the same page. Everyone's gelling with each other, and then you kind of get into more of a difficult stretch. But it's something that's always to be thought of. In my opinion, gets underlooked at times. Is who do you start out with, especially with bringing in new players and do you have time to gel, or are you immediately thrown to the wolves and have to play the top 3 teams in the West, top 2 in the East right away to start the season?
Right. No, I'm with you. Well, please go check out the rest of our previews at vendettasportsmedia.com, our written previews. Please go check out the other previews that we have written on the site or on the YouTube channel. I just said the same thing twice. Please go check out our other YouTube NBA season previews. I wish I could talk. I really can't. In addition to all of our other content on vendettasportsmedia.com, obviously the World Series is going to be starting soon. NHL season's in full effect. That started up a couple of weeks ago. College football, NFL, college basketball season is going to be starting up here within a couple of weeks. So please go check all that stuff out in addition to all of our NBA content at vendettasportsmedia.com and at Vendetta Media on our YouTube channel. You see the banner below. My name is Matt. This is Jerry Walker. Thank you all for watching. See y'all next time.